from the Spotlight in Bensenville. My name is Frank DeSimone, Village President, and your host for this episode. So today we'll be discussing the Bensenville Rodent Mitigation Program with Evan Summers, Village Manager, and Curtis Posgay, the Director of Community and Economic Development. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So I know we did a show earlier. We're going to circle back on some of our accomplishments on this. So can you give us just an overview of the Rodent Mitigation Program and why it was initially implemented here in town?
Yeah, so parts of the program have been in place for years, but this year we sort of brought it all together under what we call our Bensenville's Integrated Pest Management Program. So, we saw a kind of a drastic uptick in rodent reports this year. I think part of that is just the residents are more familiar with our See-Click-Fix application program, so there's easier ways to report these types of things now. Which is good, but we also had a lot of big developments in the area, not just in our town, our neighbors, and that basically sent rodents scurrying. So we had to, find ways to address the issue, and so again, came up with this rodent mitigation program, focusing on prevention, monitoring, and then control to manage the rodent populations in what we say is environmentally sensitive matters.
So, of the specific neighborhoods most affected by the rodent activity, how has the program identified and targeted those areas?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular neighborhood that was any worse, although I do think that the north and west sides probably saw it a little bit more, particularly with the neighborhoods that came down in Wooddale along 83. I think that big development sent rodents kind of scurrying, towards us. And then you're up there near the industrial areas too. So I think it was a little worse on the north side, but we did see issues all over, whether it was down, near our shopping center or, even over at our south industrial area. So we kind of got, reports from all over. So it wasn't just a one specific neighborhood or anything. We really rely on the residents to file complaints or reports, mainly through See-Click-Fix, but we got a lot of calls just directly into the Community and Economic Development Department as well. We send an inspector out to kind of assess the issue. It doesn't always require mitigation. A lot of times it's just, telling, residents, property owners, businesses, to clean up, and that's kind of the big first step. But if mitigation measures are needed, we do have a contractor that we hired to deal with this specifically. So they'll come out, do their assessment, and most likely, if there's an issue, we're setting bait stations down.
I think another big leap forward that we had wasn't just when rodents were sighted we started responding. We got proactive, and once development starts happening, we now require that developers put out rodent mitigation measures as part of the development. So it stops the problem before it ever gets into the neighborhoods, and I think it's a huge step for us.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I know we'll probably get this later in the show, but we're having a huge development right now. The old Cascade is completely demolished. How has that affected our community with our rodent complaints?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten a complaint regarding that specific development at this point, which is great. They were required as part of their permitting process to have rodent mitigation services on site, so that we require that as part of permitting now. They have to show us that they have a contract.
So before that building ever came down, the bait stations are already in place.
Right.
Good. So what type of mitigation methods are being used, and how have they been received in the community? I know there were some mixed responses at the initial process, and then everybody was kind of brought up to speed.
Yeah, rodents need, Evan always says, it's food, water, a place to live. That's what we're trying to attack when we're, addressing the issue. So first, the inspector goes out to the property. They're basically looking for issues. For how are rodents surviving, and a lot of times it's, you'd be surprised, I guess, but it's not picking up after your dog. It's leaving piles of wood or junk out on the property.
Bird seed.
Feeding wild animals. We need to address those issues first and foremost. If we don't just go out and bait. So that's the biggest one. Is just property maintenance in general. And then from there, if we do need to bring out, if there's issues, if we find burrows or if there's something beyond the property owner's control, that's where we bring out the inspector. They do their assessment, and generally they're putting down bait stations. Now, we did have, and quite frankly, just us building the pest integration management program, we I don't think we knew how that would operate from the pest control side. So when we brought on the pest management company, they specifically told us that they don't use the powder, and we heard that from the community, very concerned about using that sort of poison powder or whatever. And so
tracking powder,
yeah,
tracing
exactly.
powder, yeah.
We weren't aware that the environmental issues, how that kind of works, and they told us right away we don't do that.
We never use that.
We've never used that. Yeah. So their bait stations don't utilize that powder. So that's a kind of a learning curve for us. We were going off of what other communities had done or suggested. So very, like I said, in our mind, very environmentally conscious about how we are baiting properties out there.
I mean, nothing is ever 100%, right? I mean, if you're trying to get rid of a rodent issue, things get affected, and we kind of tried to weigh that out as best as we can. Mm-hmm. We went to the people who know rodent mitigation the best, and we took their word for it. I mean, and that's what they do, right?
100%. I think bait stations don't work if there's readily available food lying around.
Right.
So that's what, when Curtis was talking about that's a huge thing for us, is we need to eliminate all the other food sources, and then we can put a bait station in. And if that's the only food source, those rodents are dead.
All right. So could you describe any changes or reductions in the rodent sightings or the changes in the complaints since the program began?
Yeah, so we really ramped up our efforts and kind of had this full program go kind of July-ish, June, July-ish, and in the beginning of summer. So naturally, July and August were our the height of complaints, basically, the height of reports, specifically in C-Click Fix, but even people calling in. And part of that is just being summer. I mean, that's naturally when there's going to be more activity. But I think also part of that is, our reporting system, the website, the mapping feature. I mean, we really went out to the community saying, this is how we're going to attack this issue. Right. And so we were getting a lot of reports in. The numbers dropped dramatically from August to September, though. In August, we peaked at 56 rodent complaints reports. September, we only had 15. October, we only had 7. We placed 25 bait stations in August, which we feel made obviously a huge difference. And the village only places bait stations on single-family or single-unit residents. Commercial and rentals have to provide their own rodent mitigation. So our 25 placed though in the single-family districts, we feel made a huge difference. We placed only 9 in September, and we haven't placed any since. Okay. So, I mean, we do think we had an impact.
Okay, good. We've spent a lot of staff energy on this, but I also want to recognize the residents have been awesome in this. When we've been out in the office of the village president, a lot of residents are taking matters in their own hands. They're doing their own inspections of their yards. They're taking down their bird feeders. They're picking up after their pets. So the residents have been awesome in this. I really want to thank them.
And I agree with that. And once the village, actually was informed about it, we were on it. I mean, there was grumblings around social media sites everywhere, but I mean, we don't monitor that. Once we get to it, we were on it, and we did something quickly. And I think, like I said before, a lot of it has to do is we're progressing, right? We're progressing in town. Everywhere around us is progressing, the tollway, the railroad. I mean, we harp on this every time we talk about it. And we're disturbing these burrows and these habitats for these rodents.
At the height of it, we had 2 or 3 inspectors every day, all day, out in the field addressing this problem. Right. With the numbers starting to decline, we've been able to, put them back to the other duties. So we hit it strong. The residents hit it strong. Our businesses have been cooperative. The multifamily owners have been cooperative. So everyone's working together on this. And when we talked last time, that's what we were looking for. We needed that full 360 circle response, and that's what we've delivered.
Absolutely. So what type of inspections and treatments are provided under our program?
Yeah, again, so the inspector first investigates, right?
That's our inspector goes out
yeah,
first.
Our inspector, yeah. So the village inspector, we get a report, the village inspector will go out and investigate. And that's just, determine baseline what's the issue. Is it a property, owner's issue, or is there something else going on? So, we don't automatically bring out the pest control specialist. We do our initial investigation in-house. Need to eliminate those 3 conditions that allows the rodents to survive. So we're talking food, water, a place to live. So, properties just need to be maintained first and foremost. That's what we're looking for. Once we fix those base issues, then we bring out the pest control contractor to figure out the best steps forward. We really rely on their expertise on what those next steps are. But, typically that's going to be bait station treatment. Again, we had the concerns about the type of bait stations we were using, and our contractor, strongly recommends about not using the powder. So that's not what we do. So rely on his expertise if we need to go that route, and then place bait stations.
And I want to mention, just jump in there real quick, these bait stations are provided for free. Some other towns around us are charging the residents or cost sharing with the residents. From the get-go, we said, no, this is something that we can help and we're going to do. So this is a free service that we're providing to our residents because they deserve it.
And that's a good point. And I don't even think we reached the maximum amount of bait stations that we thought we were going to reach.
Yeah.
No, we still have capacity. We want people, if you have a rodent problem, reach out to us.
We hope we don't need to use those.
We hope we don't need to. It's great that we're not using them, but we have the capacity. We can do more if we need to. Just let us know.
So how does the village monitor and track how effective our program is?
Yeah, so we track complaints and the number of bait stations. So we, internally, we basically have a spreadsheet that we're tracking all this. So residents can follow along though. We created, as part of the mitigation program, we created a website. We have a landing page on the village website for rodent mitigation. And then we worked with our GIS consultant to kind of produce maps showing all the information. So you can follow along about both basically currently what's out there, so number of complaints the last month, number of bait stations placed, but then also historically you can see what we've done over time. And so you'll see the maps. If you bring up the full map with everything, it's kind of peppered with all over the place, all the issues, but if you targeted it down to a specific month, you can see where the issue is and how we addressed it and how it's getting better.
And we use that technology to make smarter decisions, right? So we can see if there is a hotspot area, we can send extra inspectors out there, provide extra bait stations, and address that issue where it's at.
Right. I know we touched on this. I just want to recap real quick. What role do our residents play in the success of our program? And let's recommend some actions that they use.
Yeah, the biggest one is to maintain your properties. Again, rodents need three things to live. It's food, water, and a place to live, right? So keep your property clean and well maintained. Cut your grass. Don't leave piles of wood or debris in your yard. Eliminate those sources of food and water. Pick up after your pets. That's probably the biggest one. It's really surprising how often we run into that. You got to pick up after your pets. Stop feeding wildlife, especially if it's an issue. We understand bird feeders, and we love great backyards and gardens that, have a lot of birds. If you have a rodent issue, though, maybe it's time to put the bird feeder away for a little bit until we can solve that issue. And then, just report to us if all else fails. We need to know about it. If we don't know about it, then we can't address it, So we need you to help us solve this issue in the village.
Yeah, and it's been some things that, that we've learned along the way. Open compost pits in your yard. We shouldn't be throwing food scraps into our yard. Fruit-bearing trees. We had one resident who was saying that, I've got rodents climbing my pear tree. Well, they're going for the pears, and so maybe we need to reassess if fruit trees are allowed. We don't allow fruiting trees in the village parkway for that very reason. We don't want that fruit to come down and become a food source for wildlife.
Right. How can residents find out more about our program?
Yeah, so I mentioned it, but we have a landing page on the village website. Under community, at the top of the page will be a drop down, and then under resources for residents, you can find the link for the rodent mitigation program. So we've also created flyers with basic information, including how to utilize the See-Click-Fix program to request an inspection. Residents can always call my department, Community and Economic Development. That's 630-350-3413. You can speak with somebody. They'll basically put a request into our See-Click-Fix internally, and we'll send an inspector out to check out the situation.
I have a few more questions, but we have to take a break. You guys have a few more minutes?
Of course.
100%.
We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
You're watching Bensenville TV, providing local government programming to residents 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, featuring board meetings, news, events, bulletin boards, and original programming about the services provided by our municipal government and affiliated organizations. Always on, offering community information anytime. To find out more, visit our website, www.bensenville.il.us. Live, learn, explore. Bensenville Community Television.
Hello, welcome back to Spotlight on Bensenville. My name is Frank DeSimone, Village President and your host for this episode. Today we have been discussing the Bensenville Rodent Mitigation Program with Evan and Curtis here. We're just going to jump right in. Let's just rewind a little bit. Describe the changes or reductions in our rodent sightings so far since the program began.
Yeah, July and August were the height of complaints. The numbers dropped off dramatically from August to September, though. So August peaked at 56 rodent reports. September only had 15. October only had 7. We had placed 25 bait stations in August, and we feel that made a huge difference. I mean, that was the height of it. That's where I think we made the most ground fighting this issue. We only placed 9 in September, and we haven't placed any since then. So we feel we made a big difference.
So the trend line's looking good. I think it's important that we're not going to get to zero. This is a mitigation program. We're going to constantly be on this. The trend line looks good, but we know this is a cyclical problem. Right. So we're going to stay on top of it. We want our residents to help us be part of that. Let us know where the rodents are. We're going to be after them.
How does the Community and Economic Development Department handle cases of the rodents, let's say like in rental properties or businesses?
Yeah, it's handled similar to any other request or complaint. Once we receive the request, we send out an inspector to investigate. If there's a problem, the inspector in these cases will issue a correction notice. So a correction notice includes a deadline for compliance. And should they not comply, essentially we'll take them to our local adjudication court. But rentals and commercial businesses, rentals are essentially commercial businesses, they're required to provide their own mitigation measures. So we won't be using our consultant to place bait stations there. They are required to provide their own and prove that too. So that's part of the correction notice that they receive. So this generally means that they're hired a pest control company too, and then kind of providing the contract to us, showing that they maybe have like a 6-month deal with them to take care of that issue.
Do we have the ability to kind of like fact check them and say, I mean, they can have a bait station out there, but a bait station could be empty? Yeah,
so we actually, something we learned this year was that a lot of these commercial companies that said they had bait stations just had old, empty bait stations. So our contractor provided us with keys to open these bait stations while inspectors are out doing inspections. So they can now pop open a box really quick to see if there's any bait actually in there. And so yeah, we do double check that now.
And so if there isn't any bait in there, we go back to that business or property owner and we say, Gotcha. Need to provide us a contract. We're coming back, and that's a red flag for us to keep an eye on, to keep on top of that business.
So, how can residents, if they really want to deep dive in this, see the activity, the occurrences of what we're doing?
Yeah, so we worked with our GIS consultant. We basically created these live GIS maps that show both where the reports have been and then where villages implemented any mitigation measures. So mainly if we place bait stations, we kind of have little stars on the map. So currently the map is on our website. GIS has been working to make it even more live, but so there's always kind of improvements going in. But residents will be able to toggle essentially kind of different months, years, and then bait stations.
Has the program involved any partnerships with external organizations or experts? And maybe we could talk a little bit about our pest control management team.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what we did is we hired a pest control company who are the experts here. We had a couple that we were using already. We focused on one for this program because they wanted to do residential more. The other company actually does more commercial if needed. But really rely on their expertise to determine, what mitigation measures are needed, and really even to draft our program, when we were really kind of forming that management integration program. So contractor is the one who has advised us, not about using the dust or the powder. They're the ones that have kind of advised us about the length of time needed for bait stations, things like that. So really rely on their expertise.
And another important partnership is we can only provide services to incorporated residents.
Right.
We know rodents don't know or care where that boundary ends and begins. So we formed a partnership with DuPage County to help with the unincorporated area. I believe they hired our same contractor for unincorporated Bensenville. So we're all speaking the same language, we're using the same tactics, and we're hitting rodents where they are.
And it seems to be working.
It does. The complaints are down. We're on top of it. Residents seem to really be helping out and being part of the solution, and I knew they were going to be helpful, and they've exceeded my expectations.
So looking ahead, what are the long-term goals for the program, and are there any plans to expand it, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, we essentially intend to run the program pretty much as we did this year for the next season. I think the advantage we're going to have is we're going to be starting things much earlier, and we've been doing essentially a huge education push to our residents, right? So now I think most people are aware of how to report issues and how to keep their properties maintained to prevent this in the first place. But this is why we do spotlights like this, or any sort of the website landing page, which we didn't have before. It's like it's getting that information out there, letting people know how to report the issue, and then we'll be able to attack the problem sooner. So
And I think the important thing too is this plan is adaptable, and this year it seemed like one of the big drivers was all the development and digging in the ground. I didn't really see that coming, but we adapted to it. So
Correct.
I don't know what the next iteration of this is going to look like, but the plan is adaptable. So no matter what comes down the line, we're going to be able to pivot and quickly get on it.
And I know, and I heard this a little bit, and we know how it works in-house here. We would get the first complaint, or somebody would tell somebody, and then it would be a week or so before the village kind of did it. It takes a little time to get all these people together and get a solid program, because you don't want to go, like you said, throw powder all over town and then realize a week later, holy cow, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Right, we need to make an appointment with that, whoever making the complaint, we have to make an appointment. And we know people go to work and our team is here, and so trying to schedule that, it does take a little bit.
Because I think
of
we
time.
rolled it out relatively quickly.
Right, so it was a existing program essentially since 2017. All we did is flip it from an internal program to an external program.
Right, we tweaked it a little bit.
And I mean, and talk about the tweaks. So in our See-Click-Fix program, when you were reporting before, you could do it anonymously, and we had to change that. So it's still anonymous, but now they are required to put in a contact. So we can reach out to somebody, because there were a few instances where people were reporting anonymously, but we didn't know who to contact regarding the problem.
Okay.
So it was a tweak on live learning this year that we had to make an adjustment to the See-Click-Fix program.
So before I let you guys go, what advice would you give other communities facing the similar challenges as we did for the rodents?
I've been giving a lot of this to fellow city managers in DuPage, is create that integrated pest management plan and then go public with it. I think when we did our hot wash of what we could have done better, we should have gone forward facing and public with this sooner, and that would have helped get ahead of this. So I tell my other city managers, get that integrated pest management plan, get your residents involved. You can't fix this internally. This takes that 360 approach.
All right, man, good advice. Thank you guys for joining the show. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time for more Spotlight on Bensenville.